Hey guys, it's me cyoubx and welcome to part 4 on how to be sub-2 on 5x5. In this part we're going to be talking about edge pairing and just like part 3 I'm going to be talking about how to use filters first, and then we will go to specific cases for the actual edge pairing. So for filters, if you remembered from the other parts, I did say that you want to start with the same filter colors throughout each sub-step. So for centers, the example I used was white and yellow. I did the white and yellow centers first, and the point of that was to prime my brain so that once I got to edge pairing, the white and yellow pieces would stick out more. For instance, I see yellow, 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 white. Those colors just pop out more for me. And the benefits of having those colors pop out, well, there's two benefits. The first reason that filters are really nice for edges is that it cuts down the amount of time it takes you to make a decision. So for instance, if you see this and you say, oh, blue-orange is almost done, I just have to find one more piece, but then you at the same time see, oh look, yellow and orange, well that's almost done too, I only need one more piece for that, so which one do I do? It might take you half a second to make that one decision, and that might not seem like a lot, but if you do it for the 8 edges on the top and bottom, that's 4 seconds right there. So it definitely adds up on 5x5. You want to make sure that you streamline the solve as much as possible, and filters will help you do that. The second reason I like using filters for edges is because it's very easy to bookkeep. What I mean by that is keep track of how many edges you've already done. So generally, if you do edge pairing on the E slice like I do, you're going to have buffers on U and D, so you're going to have 4 spots to place your finished edges on the top and then 4 on the bottom. And if you don't do filters, if you say just do anything that you see, for instance, I could do the yellow and orange and the blue and orange, and then I would have 2 done. If you just do that and you don't have filters, you completely disregard that. You have to keep track of how many edges you've done, and you also have to keep track of 2 numbers, how many you've done on the top layer and how many you've done on the bottom layer. And after a while that gets a little confusing, so sometimes what will end up happening is you've already finished the 8, but you're going to go ahead and pair the 9th one anyway because you think you still have the buffer open, but you don't. And so you're actually just wasting a lot of moves and a lot of time. So if you use filters like white and yellow, there's going to be 4 yellow edges and 4 white edges. So if you know that you've done all of your filter colors, you know that you're done with the 8 buffer spots, and you don't have to think as much about how many you've already done because you just look for any that are left. And the third reason is similar to what I said for centers. If you do your filter colors first for your edges, that's going to prime your brain to see those colors more in the subsequent steps. So when I talked about centers in part 3, I was saying how the yellow and white edges would pop up more. It's the same principle. After you finish edge pairing, you're going to go to 3x3 stage, and for most of you who use CFOP, you're going to be doing either white or yellow cross because that's kind of why you pick those filter colors. So by then, you've done white and yellow centers, and then you've done white and yellow edges. And so once you get to 3x3 stage, those white and yellow pieces are really going to stick out at you, and it's going to be a lot easier to find your cross pieces and build that cross as quickly as possible so that you don't waste time there. So the idea of filters is very useful, especially for edge pairing. It's kind of where everything comes together, and so I want to make sure you understand the concept. And if you have any questions about filters for edges, or centers really, just leave a comment, I'll try to get back to you. So that's all I wanted to say about filters. Now let's get on to the general strategy I like to use for edge pairing. So say I'm going to go for this yellow and orange piece and make a tredge like so. What some people do is they just put it on the top and replace it with a buffer, and then they look for the next edge. That's perfectly fine, except that you're wasting about 3 moves every single time you do that. A better idea is, instead of just randomly inserting it to a buffer, find the piece you want next. For instance, I see this blue and white, and I know that there has to be another one on this side. So right here, you see how there's this blue and white piece, and I want to bring that down. So if I just replace like this and then slice over, I save moves. If I were to put this in the, well, I guess top layer first and then bring this down, I'd be wasting 3 moves because it would take me 3 moves to put it in the buffer and 3 moves to take this one out of the buffer, when I could just do both at the same time. So just to show you another one, I'm going to finish up this blue and white by bringing this down, and instead of just randomly inserting it to the top, I see that I have this green and yellow, so I'm just going to insert that and replace it into the buffer all in one sequence. So I guess I'll do one more demonstration. So I want this piece, bring it down. If I pair it, and now I want to find the next piece. So I see I have this orange and white. So I can bring that to the top and bring down the orange and white in one sequence. As far as other strategies for just edge pairing as a whole, one thing that a lot of people like to do is pair 4 of the edges and then put them all on the same buffer first, on the same buffer layer, so that if you rotate the cube, you don't have to worry about pieces being here, and so look ahead is a lot better for the remaining 4 buffer edges. I typically don't like to do that because sometimes what happens is you put everything on the same buffer, but sometimes the piece that you want next is on this side, and if you force it on this buffer, you're going to be wasting the 3 moves I talked about previously. So there's pros and cons to both. One's not faster than the other. You can try both and see which one you like more. I've done both, and I get about the same times with both ways. So for instance, here I have this buffer done in this one. So if I pair this, and I insert it to the top, so the piece I want is here. So if I insert this to the same buffer layer, you see how I have all 4 done now. I don't have to worry about any of these pieces. I can turn it to the bottom and just worry about these 4. Now, of course, this one was filled before because I was giving the example, but the idea is that you now don't have to worry about these edges. It makes look ahead a lot easier for the remaining ones, and to you, that might be worth it. To me, not so much. So when you're doing the first 8 edges, so that would be the 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom, there's only one case that I think you might not know. Everything else is very intuitive. You basically just put everything on the same layers, and then you just slice over, match it, and then replace it. The one case that you might not know is if you have something like this, so blue and yellow, same color here, blue and yellow, so all the yellow's on top, or it could be that all the blue is on top. When this happens, you can do one of 2 things. You can do the edge flip, and then slice, which is typically what I do. But another thing that's really, really good is if you just rotate like this, and then you see you have an isosceles triangle, and if you watch part 3 of this series, you know that this is basically the space shuttle thing. So you turn the middle layer away, do a U2, turn the middle layer back. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you do a final U2, because if you don't, your middle layers will be misaligned. So here it is again. Again, we have the yellows on top, isosceles triangle shape. Turn the middle layer away, U2, turn it back, U2. I'm willing to bet that most people are taking way too much time for the last 4 edges, which is why I want to talk about it now. For the last 4 edges, you do one of 4 things. You either slice, do an edge flip, do an R2, or you do the isosceles triangle thing that I just covered, or you do a combination of those. For instance, here you see I have the green, red, green, red, green, red. This is the space shuttle thing that I talked about, so you want to turn it like this, so that it's like that. Turn the middle layer away, U2, turn it back. You don't have to do a U2 here since everything is already aligned, but if you want to, because of habit, you certainly can. So you see that we already have one edge paired. So the next things that you would look for, it talks about slicing. So you'll want to learn how to slice, do the edge flip, and then slice back. So for instance, green, orange, green, orange, green, orange. So if you slice first, do the edge flip. Notice how this piece was here, it's now here, so if you slice back, this is paired. As for R2s, if you look here, this blue-red and then blue-red, if you do what I just did, do the slice first, edge flip, and slice back, you notice you're not flipping anything really because this isn't taking that spot. So if you do an R2 first, like this, and then slice, you see how it positions it a lot better. So slice, edge flip, slice back, and then that's paired. For last 2 edges, some people like to learn specific last 2 edge cases. I think that's really silly because last 2 edges is really fast, even if you don't know that much. Basic procedure is you put the 2 that you have left on the front, and then without even looking, just do a slice, edge flip, slice back. Always do that for last 2 edges, except for one case, which I'll go over. But do that, and then if one of them is solved, that's great, then you just have parity. Sometimes both of them will be solved, that's also great. Sometimes you'll end up where you have to do one more slice and then slice back. It's all very intuitive. Do not do anything more than slice, edge flip, and slice back for these, except for this next case that I'm going to be talking about. The one super useful last 2 edges case is this, where you have checkerboard and checkerboard adjacent to each other. All you have to do is hold the middle layer still, or the E-slice I should say. You just want to move both of these over, edge flip this one. Then when you slice back, both of them are paired. So here it is again, checkerboard, checkerboard, slice the top and bottom, edge flip, slice it back, and then both of these are solved. I realized that edge pairing is pretty difficult, and even though the tips were pretty skimpy, that is everything I do for edge pairing. That is like the entire scope of my knowledge for edge pairing. I will see you in part 5 where I go over the conclusion, tie everything together, and then show you a few walkthrough solves to end the series. So thank you for watching. Toodles.